Welcome to the weekly deep dive. If you're anything like me, you probably feel like the amount of information coming at us right now is overwhelming. Between the AI breakthroughs, the stock market swings, crypto, and the general economy, I honestly just found myself reading endless newsletters and listening to podcasts but barely retaining any of it. I was essentially consuming information piecemeal and missing the bigger picture, so I decided to fix that with this podcast. Every Saturday or Sunday or thereabout, I sit down to synthesize the chaos of the week into one clear narrative. My goal here is really simple: to practice articulating complex ideas, to ground myself in what's actually happening, and to help you connect the dots without having to read the entire internet. This is a passion project. It's not about views and it's not about the hype, it's about understanding. So, let's get into this week's synthesis. Right now, at this exact second, an artificial intelligence is writing flawless, complex software code for the Silicon Valley startup. It is optimizing entire systems in milliseconds simultaneously. The United States military is looking at its depleted stockpile of missiles, and it's realizing it literally does not have the physical rare earth minerals to build replacements. It is a terrifying thought. Knowing it could take up to 6 years just to restock, it is completely fractured reality. Today, we are taking a massive stack of deeply contrasting sources to build a diagnostic map. We will look at Andy Krieger's geopolitical macro research, an exclusive tech interview with Canva Chief Product Officer Cameron Adams, and a huge breakdown of the Petro Dollar. We want to navigate a world that is completely bifurcating. If you just glance at the headlines right now, nothing makes sense. The stock market is soaring to heights that completely defy gravity, but on the other side, consumer sentiment is crashing to historic lows. We are living in two entirely different realities, and it's insane. To really understand this massive scope, you have to start with the actual texture of what is happening on the ground. So let's unpack this by looking at a few deeply weird, incredibly specific anecdotes. A perfect place to start is with Cameron Adams. He is the Chief Product Officer at Canva, where he recently rolled out Canva AI 2.0. When asked what surprised him most about his foundation model, his answer had absolutely nothing to do with enterprise workflows. He is using this massive billion parameter AI model to automatically generate cryptic visual clues for his kids' scavenger hunters. It sounds trivial at first, but he feeds the AI a list of hiding spots, and the AI designs, formats, and outputs these ready-to-print visual puzzles. This proves how AI has fundamentally evolved from past, not from the past, but past the phase of generic flat text generation. It is now seamlessly integrating into the mundane realities of human life. But I guess when we talk tech executives, they're simply just building digital scavenger hunts. As wild as it is, the entities that actually finance our global economy are preparing for a much darker physical reality. Right now, central banks globally are buying physical gold at the fastest pace in 50 years. We haven't seen gold accumulated like this since the 1970s. The catalyst was in 2022 when the conflict in Eastern Europe escalated and the United States froze $30 billion of Russia's foreign exchange reserves. They locked it down in a literal keystroke. Every single central bank on earth watched that happen and had a collective epiphany. They realized that their money, if held in the US Treasury bonds, is only safe as long as the United States agrees with their foreign policy. I mean, it permanently broke the trust required to hold US debt as a reserved asset. These central banks are quietly hoarding physical gold because gold sitting in the vault cannot be frozen by a server in New York. It is the ultimate physical insurance policy against a digital financial system. Contrast that rationality with what is happening in the equities market. I mean, look at GameStop's situation reported in in recent publications. I mean, GameStop CEO Ryan Cohen made an unsolicited $56 billion bid to buy eBay. GameStop's underlying business fundamentals do not support anything even remotely close to this kind of leverage. When directly asked how he planned to finance the acquisition, his response was absolutely nothing. He gave 2 full minutes of dead air and evasive non-answers. The market reaction perfectly illustrates the dangerous speculative mania running through the market. Meme stock CEO make massive takeover bids with zero mathematical backing, and the market absorbs it as if it's normal behavior. People are treating the stock market like a casino where the rules of gravity don't apply, but gravity always applies in the physical world. Which then brings us on to our final anomaly, the empty quiver. CNN reported that during recent regional escalations with Iran, the US military depleted a massive portion of key interceptor missiles. The Pentagon cannot simply order more for next month. Defense contractors have explicitly stated it will take at least 5 to 6 years just to replace the stockpiles that were fired. Building highly advanced missiles requires specific rare earth metals, or minerals rather, specifically tungsten, for heat resistance and guidance systems. And interestingly enough, China controls roughly 60% of global rare earth mining and up to 90% of processing and refining. The crazy thing is, the US wants China to buy its treasuries, and then it takes the money that China gave it, and then it will go to China and say, "Hey, China, can you sell me your rare earth minerals?" And China will sell them the tungsten, and they will take the tungsten, develop the weapons, and then what do they do with that? They point it right back at China. It's like it's the craziest thing. Anyway, back to the story. The US military machine is entirely dependent on its greatest geopolitical rival just to source the physical dirt required to build weapons. You cannot fight a kinetic war with paper assets. When we lay these 4 stories out on the table, you start to see the exact shape of this crisis. And numerous macro research outlines a complete bifurcation of reality. I mean, on one hand, we have a physical reality rapidly deteriorating and constrained by actual resources. And on the other hand, we have a digital financial market behaving as if physical constraints no longer exist. I mean, connecting the geopolitical dots, the US-Iran conflict has led to the effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz. This is arguably the most critical geopolitical choke point on the planet. Roughly 20% of global oil consumption, a massive portion of liquid natural gas, and a third of the world's fertilizer shipments pass through there daily. When war shuts that down, it creates an immediate catastrophic physical supply shock. The shock creates sticky embedded inflation. Energy spikes cause manufacturing and delivery costs to surge, while choked fertilizer supplies make food prices spike. And this isn't inflation caused by people having too much money, it is caused by a fundamental lack of physical goods. Meanwhile, in the tech sector, investors are completely ignoring the inflation. They are looking at blocked shipping lanes and just shrugging. The market consensus right now is that artificial intelligence will permanently expand human productivity and make physical constraints obsolete. They dismiss adverse physical developments as temporary glitches that the magic of AI will solve. The logic feels exactly like the late 1990s dot-com era. The internet did revolutionize global commerce, but the valuation extrapolation was catastrophically wrong. Investors who paid 100 times revenue for the story of the internet were completely destroyed when reality caught up. And I think we're seeing the exact same setup today. The AI technology works, but the market systematically ignores the physical reality that underpins it. You cannot code your way out of a closed shipping lane. AI requires massive data centers. As we all know, thousands of miles of copper wiring and hardware that depends on choke supply chains. The math eventually catches up. I mean, looking at the macroeconomic numbers, consumer sentiment hit a preliminary reading of 47.6 in April 2026. That is the lowest level in the entire 74-year history of the University of Michigan survey. It is worse than the 2008 financial crisis and the 1970s stagflation. Gasoline prices have surged roughly 39%, approaching $4.50 per gallon nationally. Brent crude oil is hovering above $110 a barrel due to the blockade. A quick pause for vital context regarding the political landscape. Donald Trump ordered the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz after peace talks failed. The sources explicitly state that post-COVID inflation was the primary driver for his election, and that he actively pumps the market on Truth Social. Our role here is to impartially report these geopolitical facts, right, in market dynamics exactly as it's laid out. And I'm not taking any political side on this, and I'm just sort of acting purely as an economic X-ray to explain how policies impact global markets. So, I'm not debating the ballot box. Looking objectively at the consumer, inflation expectations for the year had jumped a full 1% to 4.8% in a single month. Consumers don't believe relief is coming. Currently, 68% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. The average household holds just $9,869 in liquid cash, down 10% year over year. The house price to income ratio is at an unprecedented 5 to 1. The bottom 90% of the economy is effectively trapped without any buffer. When a geopolitical event spikes gasoline by 39%, it creates an immediate household balance sheet crisis. Yet, the stock market is hovering near all-time highs. How does it survive this macroeconomic gravity? I think we just have to look at the plumbing of the global financial system. The Petro Dollar. In 1971, President Richard Nixon took the US dollar off the gold standard. The US then struck a deal with Saudi Arabia, agreeing to provide military protection if the Saudis price oil exclusively in US dollars. This forced any country wanting oil to acquire US dollars, creating a massive synthetic demand for the currency. It allowed the United States to run massive deficits without causing hyperinflation at home. But that bedrock is cracking. Countries sitting on finite resources are looking at US inflation and asking why they should sell real assets for a diluted paper currency. The UAE officially left OPEC, and BHP just shifted commodity sales to yuan-based pricing. China has methodically built an alternative plumbing system with yuan clearing banks operating globally. If global demand for the dollar drops, investors will demand higher yields to hold US debt. This leads us to Luke Croman's adjusted Warren Buffett metric. The traditional metric measures market valuation by dividing total stock market capitalization by GDP. And Croman adjusts this by subtracting federal debt from the GDP side, stripping out artificial debt steroids. Over the last 70 years, this adjusted metric has only crossed the 100% threshold 3 times. The peak of the dot-com bubble in 2000, the post-COVID mania in 2021, and right now. The previous 2 times, the financial market crashed between 25 and 47%. So how is the stock market surviving this distortion, you may ask? It is surviving through a complete illusion of diversification. By the end of 2025, just 10 companies accounted for nearly 41% of the entire S&P 500 index. Nvidia, Apple, and Microsoft alone make up 18%. Passive investing forced index funds into massively leveraged bets on a handful of AI giants. The other 490 companies are struggling immensely with inflation and tapped-out consumer. And despite hearing about record corporate profitability, there were 1.1 million layoff announcements in 2025. Companies are cutting tens of thousands of jobs while flushed with cash. They are ruthlessly expanding profit margins by replacing human labor with software. The Stanford AI Index tracked a 53% global adoption rate of AI and a nearly 20% drop in entry-level developer employment. But we are hitting a fascinating wall, the gap between thinking and doing. Large language models are amazing brainstorming partners, but a dead end for precise execution. And Canva AI 2.0 solved this by training their AI on actual sequence of human edits, creating agentic editing. The AI acts as a collaborative partner to refine layers alongside the creator. The platforms that own the last mile of execution will justify their valuations. But the broader AI hype is hitting hard physical reality. OpenAI lost 3 senior executives and killed off the impressive Sora video generation application. Rendering high-definition video requires running graphics processing units at maximum capacity. The compute costs were simply too massive. Scaling these AI models profitably is proving to be infinitely harder than the stock market wants to admit. So, how is the smart money navigating this distorted map? And I've said this before, but the barbell strategy seems to be the go-to right now. First, you follow the whales by watching the unwinding of the Japanese yen carry trade. For years, if you don't know what this is, Japanese institutions borrowed $4 trillion in yen at zero interest to buy yielding US treasuries. But with Japan hiking rates and the yen strengthening, institutions are taking massive exchange rate losses. They are dumping US treasuries and repatriating funds before the exchange rate gets worse. Warren Buffett is also aggressively boosting cash and selling equities, signaling a severe lack of safe valuations. Second, deploy the hard and hyper barbell. On the defensive side, own hard physical assets like gold, copper, and energy as insurance. On the offensive side, own hyper digital infrastructure like Nvidia and platforms that own the execution. Third, avoid the kill zone. Avoid disrupted white-collar roles and cash-burning side-quest tech models like Sora. Also avoid the hollowing middle market. Spirit Airlines just ceased operations because their budget-conscious middle-class demographic is suffocating. Finally, you monitor the watch list. Watch for spikes in foreign selling of US treasuries and watch the artificially suppressed VIX volatility index. Traders are heavily leveraged on low volatility. If the market drops, short convexity will force them to liquidate immediately. It will create a massive violent air pocket in the market. We have mapped a profound historic bifurcation. The physical bones of the global economy are fracturing, while the digital skin looks artificially healthy. While 53% of the corporate world uses AI, only 31% of the public trusts it. When those 10 megacaps stall, there is no broad-based, healthy economic recovery waiting in the middle market to catch them. Keep your eyes open, keep watching what the whales are doing with their money, and most importantly, please keep questioning the headlines.